When Alina Ward stepped through the tall gates of the elite training camp, the morning air was sharp and heavy with tension. Rows of recruits marched across the yard, their boots striking the ground in perfect rhythm. But no one stopped to welcome her. No one even turned their head. She was invisible to them. And maybe that was exactly how they wanted it. She looked out of place from the very first step. Her sneakers were old and yellowed. Her hoodie faded from too many washes, and her duffel bag hung from one shoulder like it was filled with nothing but scraps. Around her the recruits shined in crisp uniforms, their badges polished, their devices glowing with high-tech pride. They looked like warriors. She looked like a visitor who had lost her way. A tall instructor noticed her at once, his face stern, his clipboard in hand, his voice cutting like a blade as he demanded her name and reason for being here. The recruits slowed their march, whispers rising like smoke. Who was this girl? Why was she here? Surely she could not belong in a place built for the best of the best. Elena gave her name quietly, her voice steady but soft. The instructor frowned, as if the sound of her calmness offended him. He reached for her papers, and she slid a sealed envelope from her bag. The seal carried a strange insignia, dark red, unfamiliar to most of the recruits watching. He raised a brow, muttered something under his breath, and waved her inside with a gesture that spoke more of annoyance than approval. As she walked deeper into the camp, the atmosphere thickened. Recruits leaned against walls, their laughter sharp, their eyes cutting like knives. Some smirked, some chuckled. One whispered that she must have taken the wrong turn from a village bus station. Another muttered that she would not last till the evening, but Elena kept walking, her steps slow, steady, and unshaken, like she had already walked through storms greater than this. The briefing hall was loud when she entered, tablets glowing in rows, instructors moving like commanders of an empire, recruits lined in perfect seats. But when Alina slipped into a spot near the back, the noise shifted. A ripple of attention moved through the room. A broad-shouldered man spun around, his uniform sharp, his grin wide with mockery, telling her she was in the wrong place. The seats were for official candidates only. Before she could answer, a girl with bright blonde hair leaned closer, her uniform new and shining, her voice dripping with scorn as she told Elena she was probably looking for the kitchen instead. Laughter followed, not loud but sharp enough to cut through her skin. The instructor in the corner frowned, asking for her documents, his tone clipped, his words heavy with disbelief. Elena reached into her duffel, pulled out her invitation letter, folded neat, handed it over without a word. The man scanned it quickly, his eyes narrowing. Then without looking at her, he shoved it back and ordered her to go to logistics for verification. The hall buzzed louder now, heads shaking, whispers sharper. Someone muttered she would be gone by noon. Someone else laughed that she would not survive the warm-up. She walked out without a word, her face blank, her step steady. The recruits watched her go like spectators watching someone fall before the fight even began. But there was no stumble in her stride, no crack in her calmness. And that silence was heavier than their laughter at logistics. The office smelled of paper and dust. An older officer sat behind a desk, his eyes tired, his fingers quick on the keyboard. As he entered her name, his face shifted from boredom to confusion. His eyes froze, his lips parted as he muttered something about a directed mission from a special program. Another instructor overheard, asking with surprise if that program had not been shut down years ago. The officer ignored him, printed a clearance, and shoved it toward her, warning that she should not expect special treatment. Elena nodded once. No words wasted. She tucked the paper away, turned, and left the office, her steps leading her back to the hall where the recruits waited with smirks and cruel eyes. This time no one had saved her seat. She was placed with the rejects, the misfit squad, the ones with bad records and failed evaluations, a group that looked at her with the same judgment as the rest, only sharper because they themselves were on the edge. As drills began that afternoon, Alina stood at the sidelines, her notebook in hand, her pen scratching slowly, watching the obstacle course with calm eyes while recruits sprinted, crawled, and strained under the sun. A female instructor stormed over, boots kicking up dust, her voice loud as she mocked Elena for standing idle, asking if she thought this was a spectator sport. The nearby recruits laughed harder, their voices carrying over the field, calling her useless, calling her a wannabe. Elena did not react. She simply turned a page in her notebook and kept writing, her jaw tight but her posture still calm. The instructor spat more words, furious, before storming off. The laughter of the recruits followed, yet under it all there was a strange pause, a tiny flicker of doubt none of them wanted to admit later. Inside the hall, the instructor demanded she open her bag in front of everyone. Voices rose, excitement like a storm. Recruits leaned forward, waiting for proof she was a fraud, waiting for her humiliation. Assistants pulled her duffel open and shook it out on the table. Pens rolled across the surface. A notebook landed with a soft sound. But then a piece of cloth slipped free and hit the floor. It was an old military uniform, folded with perfect care, its fabric faded but strong. And stitched across the chest was a symbol that no one expected to see. The room fell silent. Whispers died. Even the instructor froze, because in that moment the ordinary girl had just become something far more dangerous. The hall was frozen in silence as the folded uniform rested on the floor. The recruits stared at it as if it carried fire. The faded cloth looked simple, but the way it had been pressed and cared for made it feel heavier than any weapon. Someone whispered a name under their breath. Someone else shook their head. No one wanted to move first. No one wanted to touch what was not theirs. Elena bent down slowly, her hand steady as she lifted the fabric. Folding it once more with the same calm care as before, she placed it back in her duffel, then turned toward the empty seat at the back. Her face unreadable, her eyes calm, the tension in the room rising with every step she took. Not a single recruit laughed now, not a single one dared to speak. Yet the silence itself was louder than before. The instructor cleared his throat, forcing his voice to steady as he barked for the class to continue. But his eyes betrayed him, darting to Elena every few seconds, his voice faltering when she looked his way. The recruits whispered again when the lecture ended, some claiming the uniform was stolen, others swearing they had seen that insignia in old classified reports. No one dared to say it aloud, but the thought grew in every mind. What if she was not a fraud? What if she was something else entirely? By lunch the storm had only grown. The cafeteria buzzed with rumors, trays clattering louder than normal, groups forming at tables with heads bent together. One recruit with sharp eyes muttered that she must have pulled the uniform off a dead soldier. Another said the insignia belonged to a unit erased from history, erased because it was too dangerous. Elena sat alone at the corner, her sandwich plain, her notebook open beside her, her pen moving slowly across the page. Ignoring the stares around her, a broad-shouldered recruit with a shaved head slammed his tray down near her, his voice booming across the cafeteria as he declared she was a liar, that she was no soldier, just a girl playing dress-up. The crowd turned, their attention fixed like a spotlight. Elena did not look up. She simply placed her pen down and slid a metal tag from under her hoodie. She set it gently on the table, the silver scratched from years of use. But when her fingers brushed it, the tag glowed faint red, a soft pulse of light that made the air heavy. The officer standing nearby froze, his hand shaking as he picked up the tag. He turned it over, his lips parting as his eyes widened. He carried it to the scanner at the wall, recruits rising to their feet, straining to see. The screen blinked once, then flashed a warning: clearance level restricted. Omega only, access denied. The officer's phone buzzed immediately, his face pale as he read the alert, his hand trembling until the device slipped and clattered to the ground. Recruits gasped, some stepping back as if the glow itself could burn them. The cafeteria held its breath, the silence so deep it felt alive. And in that silence, Elena reached out, lifted the tag, and placed it back around her neck, her sandwich waiting as if nothing had happened. She took another bite, calm and slow, her eyes fixed on the table. Ignoring the storm raging around her later that afternoon, the drills shifted to sparring. The recruits gathered around the mats, their energy fueled by whispers and doubt. An instructor sneered at Alina, asking if she dared to step forward, if she dared to prove she was not a fraud. A decorated recruit, tall and muscular, cracked his knuckles and volunteered to face her, grinning as he promised to finish her in seconds. The circle tightened, phones raised. Eyes sharp with hunger for a show, Alina removed her hoodie, folded it with care, and stepped onto the mat barefoot, her stance loose, her expression unreadable. The recruit lunged with confidence, his fist swinging, but Alina moved like water. A shift of weight, a twist of motion, and in less than 10 seconds he was flat on his back, gasping for air. His pride shattered before the crowd could even cheer. The silence after the thud was deeper than the roar of any victory. She bowed once, picked up her folded hoodie, and walked off the mat. Her steps slow and steady, her eyes never looking back. The recruits parted like waves around her, some whispering in awe, some glaring in hate, all caught between fear and disbelief. The instructor's voice shook as he dismissed the group. But the recruits did not move right away. They only watched her leave the field like a shadow slipping from view that evening as the sun set over the camp. Alina sat on a bench with her notebook, sketching lines and shapes that looked like maps or strategies. A young recruit, barely 19, approached her, his face pale but his eyes wide with curiosity. He asked her how she had done it, how she had dropped the fighter so easily. Alina looked at him, her gaze soft for the first time. She leaned closer and whispered that strength was never about proving you were enough. It was about being, about knowing. Her words landed heavy, the recruit nodding slowly as if she had given him a secret he could not yet understand. The camp was restless that night, recruits whispering in corners, instructors huddling in private meetings. No one said it aloud, but everyone felt it. Something had changed the moment the folded uniform touched the floor, and nothing would ever be the same again. The next morning the camp woke early, the air crisp, the sound of boots echoing against the stone paths. Recruits moved fast, some excited, some nervous, all whispering the same question: who was Alina? Why was she here? What did that glowing tag mean? None of them had answers, but all of them felt a growing unease. Alina stepped onto the training ground, her hoodie loose over her shoulders, her duffel still slung at her side, the same calm expression on her face. No pride, no fear, only silence. Recruits glanced at her, some with mocking grins, others with nervous eyes. None dared to speak to her directly, yet the tension followed her like a shadow. An instructor with sharp eyes and a scar across his cheek called her name, his voice hard, his tone full of challenge. He ordered her to join the sparring circle. The recruits buzzed with energy, waiting for another show. This time the instructor wanted to prove she was not untouchable. He signaled for a champion to step forward, a broad recruit, tall, thick with muscle, once a Marine, his grin wide and cruel as he promised to break her in half. The circle of recruits tightened, phones raised, eager to capture her failure. The Marine cracked his knuckles, bouncing on his feet, taunting her with words about frauds and fakes. Alina only stood there, her hoodie sliding from her shoulders, her stance loose, her hair tied back, her eyes fixed not on him but on the mat itself, as though she was measuring space. The Marine lunged, fists swinging with all his strength. The ground shook under his charge. Recruits shouted, some cheering, some mocking, the sound mixing with heavy breath. But Alina shifted one step, her body moving like a shadow. His punch cut empty air, and in a blink she locked his arm, twisted, and flipped him hard onto the ground. The thud echoed across the yard. The Marine groaned, his strength gone, his pride shattered. The fight was over in less than 9 seconds. The silence was heavier than thunder. Recruits stared wide-eyed, jaws open. Even the instructor froze for a breath, then quickly barked for the crowd to disperse, yet no one moved. They only whispered, some in awe, some in anger, all knowing something about her was far beyond what they understood. Lena bowed once, picked up her hoodie, and stepped from the mat, calm as ever. No gloating, no triumph, only quiet steps that carried the weight of storms unseen. She sat at the edge of the field with her notebook again, pen scratching slowly, as if nothing had happened. As if silence itself was her shield. Later that day, during strategy drills, recruits gathered in groups, each ordered to prepare a mission. Plan: Elena was placed with the rejects again, misfits who scoffed at her presence. Their leader loud, arrogant, slamming the map on the table and shouting orders. His plan messy, his confidence unshaken. He pushed the map toward her with sarcasm, telling her to try if she thought she was smarter. Elena studied the lines, her fingers tracing slowly. She spoke in a calm voice, pointing out their flanks were open, that the enemy would cut them down here and here. Her words sharp but simple. The group laughed, calling her a ghost chasing shadows. They ignored her completely, presenting their plan to the instructor with pride. The instructor frowned, questioning gaps. But before Elena could add anything, the group shoved her aside, whispering that she should stop pretending to know war when the simulation began. Everything fell exactly as she predicted. Their flank collapsed. The ambush destroyed them. Alarms blared. The mission failed. Recruits groaned. Their leader read with shame. But no one looked at her, not directly, their silence heavy, their eyes flicking toward her with unease. Knowing but refusing to admit. By evening the cafeteria buzzed again, rumors growing stronger. Some said she was a spy. Others said she was a survivor from a Black Ops unit that no longer existed. One recruit muttered that no ordinary person could move like her. Another said the way she folded her uniform was a soldier's ritual, the way only the most disciplined were taught. All agreed on one thing: she was not ordinary. Elena ate alone, her sandwich simple, her notebook open, her silence unbroken. A younger recruit, barely 19, hesitated before approaching her, his voice shaky, his eyes full of both fear and respect. He asked how she had done it, how she had dropped the Marine so easily. Elena looked at him, her expression softer than before. She leaned closer, her voice low, whispering that he must stop trying to prove he was enough. That strength was not about showing, it was about knowing. The boy nodded slowly, as if he had been handed a key he did not yet understand. That night, the camp was restless. Whispers carried through the barracks, instructors huddled in meetings. One older officer muttered that he had once seen a unit with a number close to hers. A unit erased from records after a mission no one survived. Recruits who heard the whisper repeated it in hushed tones, fear mixing with curiosity, their eyes turning to her bunk at the far end, where she lay with her notebook closed, her duffel under her bed, her silence deeper than the dark. The truth was spreading now like smoke. Unstoppable, the name Ghost Viper rose in the whispers. The folded uniform replayed in their minds, the glow of the tag haunting their memory. They had mocked her, called her ordinary. But now every shadow, every silence, every calm step she took carried the weight of something they could not yet understand, something they feared they would soon discover. The sun rose heavy over the camp the next morning, light spilling across the yard where recruits lined up for navigation drills, compasses in hand, maps spread across tables, instructors barking orders to push them faster, louder, harder, the air thick with stress and expectation. Yet even in all that noise, every eye still drifted toward Elena, her calm presence stirring more whispers than the drills themselves. She was again placed with the reject squad, the misfit group that already disliked her, their leader loud and careless, waving the map with pride as he pointed the wrong way, the others following without question, laughing as if they were invincible. Elena stood at the side of the trail, her notebook in hand, her voice quiet but clear as she told them they were 200 meters off course, her finger pointing to the ridgeline where they would soon lose their path. They scoffed, one girl sneering that Elena should save her diary for bedtime stories, the others bursting into cruel laughter. Minutes later, the team stumbled into confusion, their path broken, the ridge blocking their way exactly as Elena had warned. The laughter died in their throats. The leader cursed it under his breath. The navigator admitted she had been right. They turned their eyes toward her. But she did not gloat. She did not smirk. She only closed her notebook and moved silently through the trees, her calm more cutting than any insult could have been back. At camp the story spread fast, recruits whispering that she had predicted the failure before it even began. Some muttered that she had studied maps secretly. Others swore she had instincts no normal soldier could have. An older instructor watched her longer now, his eyes narrowing as though he was remembering something from years past, his lips moving with a name no one else could hear by noon tension. Burned hotter, one recruit with sharp eyes began a live stream on his phone, mocking Elena, calling her a fake elite, showing her sitting alone in the corner of the yard with her notebook. The video spread quickly across the camp, recruits laughing into their screens. But before the stream could grow, an officer stormed in, seized the phone, and ordered the recruit to disciplinary review. Within minutes the account was deleted, the footage gone, and the recruit, pale as he was dragged away. The hall that afternoon felt different, the instructors tense, the recruits restless, the whispers louder, some demanding to know why command protected her, others insisting she was a spy. The scar-faced officer finally broke the silence, standing before the class with his voice hard as he demanded Elena explain who she really was. All eyes turned to her, the room holding its breath. She looked up from her notebook, her voice even, calm, unshaken, and said only 7 words. "I am here to see who is ready." The words cut through the hall like a blade, recruits shifting uneasily, instructors exchanging looks. Her answer gave nothing yet, it gave everything. The scar-faced officer studied her face, nodded once, then turned away, dismissing the class without another word. The silence that followed was heavier than the order itself. That night the camp was restless again. Shadows moving across the barracks, recruits whispering as they lay in their bunks. One muttered that she must be part of an erased program. Another claimed she was sent to test them, not train with them. The younger recruits trembled at the thought. The older ones clenched their fists in anger. But all of them knew the truth was closing in like a storm. The next day drills resumed, but the tension never lifted. During weapons inspection, Elena was handed her rifle by a sneering recruit with a chipped tooth. He mocked her in front of everyone, asking if she even knew which way the barrel pointed. She checked the weapon calmly, her fingers moving fast, her eyes sharp. Then she looked up and told him it was jammed because he had not cleaned it. He laughed, daring the instructor to prove her wrong. The instructor tested the rifle, his frown deepening as he confirmed she was right. The recruit went pale as he was placed on report, the others staring at Elena with unease. By afternoon a strange quiet had spread, instructors whispering in closed rooms, recruits watching Elena with fear instead of mockery. But just as the camp tried to settle, a black SUV rolled through the gates, its engine low, its windows dark. Silence fell across the yard as the vehicle stopped near the hall. A man stepped out, tall, his suit plain but flawless, his hair gray at the edges, his eyes cold and sharp. He did not introduce himself. He did not need to. The senior advisor rushed forward to greet him, whispering words no one else could hear. The man nodded once, his gaze sweeping the camp, his presence heavier than iron. Recruits stiffened, instructors straightened, everyone waiting. But when his eyes landed on Elena, the camp froze completely. She sat in the back row of the hall, her notebook closed, her duffel at her feet. She looked up slowly, their eyes meeting across the silence. And in that single look, the camp understood she was not ordinary. She was not even here for the same purpose as them. The suited man walked straight toward her, ignoring the loud recruit who tried to boast of his scores, ignoring the girl who begged to show her results, ignoring every desperate attempt to catch his attention. He reached Elena's desk, his voice low but carrying across the hall as he asked her one question. "Are you ready?" She stood calmly, lifted her duffel, and nodded. The man gestured, and together they walked out of the hall, the recruits watching in stunned silence. fear mixing with awe as the truth pressed against their minds like thunder before a storm. The camp was silent long after Elena and the suited man left the hall. Recruits stood frozen in place, their voices caught in their throats. No one dared to laugh now, no one dared to whisper, the weight of what they had just seen pressed down. Like a storm cloud ready to break, the blonde girl who had mocked Elena clenched her hands so tight her nails dug into her skin. The scar-faced instructor stared at the door as if the truth had just walked out with her and left them behind outside. The sun burned over the parade ground. The suited man walked with Elena at his side, his stride steady, hers just as calm. The guards at the gate saluted without question. Recruits watched from the windows, their breath fogging the glass as their eyes followed every step. Elena carried her duffel close, her silence heavier than any speech could have been. The suited man spoke no words, but the air around him carried authority that needed no voice. At the black SUV, the driver opened the door. Elena paused before stepping inside. She turned slowly, her eyes sweeping the camp one last time. Recruits shifted back under her gaze, some lowering their heads, some clutching their weapons tighter as if her silence itself could break them. She gave no smile, no farewell, only that steady look. Then she entered the vehicle, the suited man following her, the door shutting with a dull sound that echoed through every corner of the camp. Inside the hall, the senior advisor cleared